Hey everybody, how are you doing today? I hope each and every one of you is doing just fine. Each and every one of you are doing just fine. And I certainly do appreciate you taking the time to stop by to see me. I'm so grateful. Thank you very much. And I would like to welcome all of you to another episode of TJ's Topics. And of course, you know who I am. I am TJ. Yes, indeed. And it is such a pleasure to be with you today. And I want to, first of all, how do you like my African dashiki? I decided to put it on since we're now coming to the end of Black History Month. And I thought it might be appropriate to end the month with a little cultural type attire. and But I'm gonna be honest with you. In some ways, it really hasn't seemed much like Black History Month because to me, it seems like there's been more focus on Donald Trump and and of course we had the Super Bowl earlier this month, and a lot of focus was on that, and it's definitely been a lot of focus on um, Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce. And of course, I'm very happy for them and I wish them nothing but the best. Now, but what I came to talk about today for a few minutes is, well, it's something that sort of came to me as a result of being somewhere yesterday. I'm trying to be nice with this. I'm trying to be as nice as I possibly can. But let me go ahead on and jump right into it. My topic for today is why baby boomers are hated so much. That's my topic. Why baby boomers are hated so much. Now, I don't know about any of you out there, if you have any baby boomers in your family or not. But first of all, let's define baby boomers. Now, with regards to other countries, I don't know how they classify different generations of people, but I can only talk about how we classify generations of people here in the United States of America. And one category of people in terms of generation is baby boomers. And they are typically those who were born between the years of 1946 and 1964. They are also the generation that came along right after World War II. And the baby boomer generation, for the most part, enjoyed a myriad of privileges and prosperity. And I'm telling you, they had such great opportunities for growth and advancement, achieved many of their goals. They were afforded so many chances at a good life. And that's basically what they had. Even those who may have been considered less fortunate, such as black folks, even they had the opportunity to live a fairly decent life, regardless of the things that were going on at the time, like segregation and discrimination, prejudice, and all other forms of injustice amongst people of color. They still found a way to make it in this world, the baby boomers. And so, I see, here's the thing. I was raised by baby boomers. My parents were born in that generation. Now, I've heard many stories about how they grew up and the things that they went through and a lot of trials and tribulations and things like that. But if you do your research, you'll find that the baby boomer generation overall had it pretty good. I mean, they were able to go straight from high school right into the job market, and they landed jobs that paid pretty good wages for that time, and they were able to stay on those jobs for many years and eventually retire with a very decent income, retirement pension and Social Security and everything. But the thing is, of the preceding generations, everyone who has been born after 1964, well, while there have been some who've done very well for themselves, there are a number of people who haven't done so well. People in Generation X, which is the generation that I was born in, and millennials, they were the ones who were born right after my generation, at the beginning of the 1980s, going forth into the early 90s. And you have the Gen Zers and so forth. But it's the baby boomers who, according to the opinions of a lot of people, have caused the most damage to society, especially here in the United States. And in a lot of cases around the world too, And let me just go into a few details, outlining some of the things that has caused the baby boomer generation to be hated the most. Now, number one, the baby boomers, and this doesn't, and keep in mind, everybody, this doesn't apply to all baby boomers. We're not talking about the entire generation across the board, but the vast majority of people from that era, these things may apply to. And you may know quite a few people yourself whom these details may apply to. Number one, they have a sense of entitlement. They feel that everything belongs to them. Everything from their houses and their cars and boats and motorcycles and this and that. Everything that they have ever bought, it is rightfully theirs because they worked for it. Now, true enough, it's theirs and they have worked for it. So if they've worked all their life, then yes, they deserve to have nice things. But one thing that baby boomers need to keep in mind is that one day, the things that they have are going to part ways with them. And the reason why is because they are going to part ways with their things. How? Well, you know that none of us came here to stay. We didn't come to this world to live forever. All of us only here for a brief moment. We have a season and an appointed time to dwell on this planet. And when that season has ran its course, and when our time has been fulfilled, we got to get out of here. And everything that the baby boomers have bought and built and accumulated will be passed on and enjoyed by somebody else. But when you try to bring that up to some of them, they get mad. They get pissed off, and they don't want to hear it, because for some reason they think they're not going anywhere. Well, if everybody who lived before the baby boomers left here, what you think is going to happen to them? They got to get away from here too. As we all have. Number 2, a lot of times baby boomers are resistant to change. They can't accept the fact that the world evolves. They think that things are supposed to just stay the same. And they would rather for things to stay the same. They don't want things to ever change and become new. And, they don't like the fact that, there are new ways of doing things, new ways of thinking and new ways of understanding, believing. They can't accept that because of how they were brought up. And most of them were brought up to feel as if they're owed something, and they're, everything is theirs, regardless of who else is around and who else may be deserving of something. If they didn't work for it, and see, I know this because I had family members on my father's side, my late father's side, who were the same way. And anytime I tried to talk to them about certain things that I wanted, it's like I always received some type of objection to it. And I never knew why that was. It wasn't until just now, basically just recently here, when I began to figure out why they were the way they were. And it has a lot to do with their generation. That's how they were raised. They didn't beg anybody for anything. They didn't go around asking anybody for anything. They basically had everything that they needed themselves. And, and they were taught to work, of course. And people should work for what they want. But at the same time, people are not let things go to their head, because they're just that, things. And things can be lost. Things can be stolen. Things can be destroyed. But try telling that to a lot of baby boomers. Number 3, they're unwilling to pass the torch. In other words, they want to hold on to the power that they've always had. Power and influence, and we've seen many examples of that. Look at the orange man. He's a baby boomer. Donald Trump. And even though we know that he lost the election in 2020, he still tries to convince himself and his followers that he's the president of the United States. They just don't want to let go of the power. And we have baby boomers around here. Matter of fact, we have a few baby boomers right here in the school district who don't want to let go of their positions because they make such good money. And for some reason, they feel like nobody else can come along and do the job as well as they have done it all these years. But what a lot of them fail to realize is that it's never good to wear out your welcome anywhere. I don't care what it is you're doing. I don't care where you are and how good at it you are. There's a time and a season for everything. And once that season has passed, it's time to move on. But a lot of baby boomers don't see it that way. They want to stay there until the cows come home. And I think that's ridiculous. Number 4, self-centered. They feel like the world owes them something. It's all about them. A lot of them feel that way. Again, not all of them, but the vast majority of them. Number 5, baby boomers demonstrated a great deal of reckless living throughout their youth. For example, a lot of them, especially during the 1960s, that was the sexual revolution. Make love, not war. Oh, they was out here getting it on with any and everybody. You had women laying up with different men, having babies, getting pregnant, not knowing who the father was. And we see that going on right now, of course. And then you had men out here just sleeping around with everybody, planting their seed here and there. And then the babies start being born and growing up, not knowing who their father was. By the time they discover their father, well, he might be an old man, if they discover him. And that's bad, men having all these babies and not taking care of them. Creating fatherless homes, broken families. That's sad, and I'm a product of a deadbeat dad. My father had multiple children by multiple women and didn't take care of any of them. So I know all about that. And of course, he grew up during that generation, the baby boomer generation. So there it is. Number 6. A lot of times they are inherently racist because, see, the baby boomers, they were born, like I said, from 1946 to 1964. And during that time, racism, discrimination, segregation, and all of that was at an all-time high. Schools were segregated. Places of business were segregated, restaurants and what have you, doctor's offices and all that, segregated. Black folks couldn't go in the same way that white folks did. They had to be escorted to the back door and go in, if they were allowed to go in at all. White water fountains and colored water fountains, white restrooms and colored restrooms, white schools and black schools, and white kids got the best of everything in terms of books and supplies and everything for school. And the black kids, they got a bunch of hand-me-down clothes and hand-me-down books, got supplies the best way they could. It was pitiful. And a lot of that was instilled in that generation from the generation who lived before them, because that's how the world operated at that time. And it's especially how things operated here in America. Number 7, baby boomers tend to be out of touch with society. They see everything as ungodly and wrong and a sin, and oh man, they are the generation who convinced a lot of us younger ones that we were filthy rags and, according to the Bible now, we were dogs and and that God didn't love us, didn't care for us, because they had this concept of original sin that they taught us. And they started beating us over the head with it at an early age, saying that we were lost souls running around here. We were destined for hell unless we came to Jesus. But then once we were convinced of that and ultimately came to Jesus, it still wasn't enough. It's like we still had to do more in order to even win one brownie point with God. The baby boomers, they led us down that path. And that's the reason why so many people are traumatized today who were raised by those people who grew up during the time when baby boomers were having children. It's really pitiful, I'm telling you. Now, number 8, they're typically traditionalist. You know, they want things to remain the same, you know, just like they've always been. You know, they don't like change. But I say that change is good if it's for the better, you know. And there are some things that don't need to be changed. But sometimes, if change is going to bring about improvement, then by all means, let's make changes. Number 9, baby boomers a lot of times are obsessed with material things, and they're obsessed with status. That's the reason why whenever a baby boomer passes on, man, I'm telling you, it's hell trying to clean out their homes because they have accumulated a lifetime worth of junk. I mean, they have all this junk, so much stuff in their houses, most of which they didn't even need. And it's left up to the descendants to discard all that mess. And I'm in a position right now where after a while, I'm going to find myself having to do the same thing because, again, baby boomers, you know, having been raised by them, have a hell of a lot of junk. And I have got to try to dispose of that mess. And believe me, I'm actually looking forward to it. I'm actually looking forward to it. Because I love to get rid of junk. And finally, number 10, they worry too much about non-traditional things, you know, non-traditional thinking and behavior. Baby boomers don't gravitate towards difference. You know, they typically like to deal with people who are just like themselves, who think like them, who believe like them, who behave like them, who govern themselves in the same manner as them, who live their lives like them. But if anyone comes across as different from themselves, they look sideways at them. They frown upon them. They, you know, talk amongst themselves, you know, criticize them. You know, that's hypocrisy. Grin in their face, but then as soon as the person leaves, then they all, you know, saying all kind of stuff about them. Now, I don't think that's nice. Now, mind you, a lot of those same baby boomers who do this kind of stuff are church-going folks. You know, they're Christians. They love the loud and hand clapping and foot stomping and all that kind of stuff. But I'm telling you. So while we don't want to rush anybody away from here, because Lord knows I'm not into trying to put a timetable on anybody. because we all have our own individual timetable. I do feel like in many ways, the world will make a bit of improvement in some cases once the baby boomer generation has gone off the scene, because their way of thinking is, it's been a hindrance to our growth and advancement as a society. In fact, you got a lot of baby boomers up there on Capitol Hill in Washington who don't want to raise the minimum wage, don't want to pass laws and enact bills and stuff that's about helping people, but they want to hoard up everything, all of the wealth and the riches for themselves that they're going to leave behind after a while. And that is really sad. So I want to hear from you. Do you know any baby boomers out there who fit the categories that I just, the descriptions that I just outlined here? Or perhaps you're a baby boomer. And do you find yourself in any of these descriptions? If you do, then shame on you. But at any rate, I want to thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of TJ's Topics. And I do apologize if I offended anybody. Well, actually I don't, because I'm telling the truth. And sometimes the truth hurts. So let me hear from you, okay? And I look forward to joining you again. And please join me again next time for another episode of TJ's Topics. And I look forward to seeing you again soon. This is Taryn Jerome Harris, reminding you that every round goes higher and higher. I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.